Hello, everybody. My name is Caitlyn Bains. I'm a student in CAS in art history. My thesis is entitled The Moment of Decoloniality, the Effectiveness and Scalability of the Royal Museum for Central Africa's Closure and Renovation. I'd also like to thank my advisor, Professor Sophie Ghali, for her help this semester and the entire year. So, in this thesis, I will discuss the closure and renovation of the RMCA and attempt to answer the question, whether is it possible or not for a museum to practice decoloniality. With the institutional structures, community support or opposition, federal and international law, each playing a role, this question becomes impossible to answer with a simple yes or no. Nonetheless, continued discussion contemplating this question will, as I hope, allow for the museums to become a more ethical space. As a brief history of museums, the Eurocentric mode of displaying artifacts for the public began to take rise in the late 19th century. With the rise of capitalism and factory work bringing more lower-class citizens into the cities, museums became a place for workers to go on their time off. On this slide, I have highlighted the South Kensington Museum, which is now the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, as it is historically the first museum in the world to have a cafe, to really show that the museums were now a place for the public to relax. This format of exhibition is what became the modern museum, which spread to the rest of the world through colonies, especially British colonies. Museums emerging in this way means that the museum has a Eurocentric origin and colonial ties. Decoloniality theory have recently begun to find a place in museum studies. Starting with the focus of Nazi provenance research, many museums and scholars have been thinking about the approaches to be used to decolonize the museum. At the conference titled Decolonizing Museums, Cultures and Collections, Mapping Theory and Practice in East Central Europe, held in 2020 in Warsaw, Poland, the keynote addressed this issue, stating, quote, "Post and decolonial approaches have a strong foothold in post-socialist Eastern European scholarship and public discourse with regards to the legacies of Russian Soviet, German Nazi, Habsburg Polish, and Ottoman imperialism. But in practice, the impact of decolonial critique have been limited to temporary interventions rather than more sustainable heritage methods and strategies. To frame the methods of decoloniality used by the RMCA, which can be applied to other theories, I've come up with two modes of thinking, building and displacing. These two modes of thinking emerge from Cecilia Aries and Magdalena Robrowska's guidebook, Practicing Decoloniality in Museums, a guide with global examples, who lists out 6 modes of thinking, which are creating visibility, increasing inclusivity, decentering, championing empathy, improving transparency, and embracing vulnerability. I believe that by simplifying these 6 concepts into more broader themes, they can be replicated by more museums and institutions across the world with different colonial and Eurocentric histories. As a brief history of the RMCA, it begins with the 1897 Brussels International Exposition in the suburbs of Tervuren, which was to showcase the success of King Leopold II's civilization mission in Congo and featured a human zoo of 60 Congolese people dressed in traditional garbs and housed in wooden villages. In this human zoo, 3 died on the way to Brussels, and 6 died over the cold winter. The Royal Museum of Central Africa opened to the public in 1898 on these grounds. With this history, the RMCA has become known as the last colonial museum in the world, as it originated as the collection of King Leopold II's artifacts and objects from the colonization of Congo. The RMCA closed in 2013 and reopened in 2018 following a long renovation plan. The purpose of this closure was, as stated by the Director General Grado Grizzlies, was to shed its colonial image. With this, the goal of decolonization was highlighted as the main purpose from the start. Now I'll be moving into how the RMCA's renovation fits into these 2 modes of thinking. Starting with the concept of building, it emerges from Chapter 2 of the guidebook titled Increasing Inclusivity. As defined in the chapter, increasing inclusivity is to, quote, add voices, actors, and agents into the workings of the museum, unquote. The primary focus of this movement is to bring more people into the museum and make them feel welcomed and heard. Though the concept of building is not just focused on relationships with visitors of the museum, but with the broader general public and the world. The RMCA accomplishes this point in many ways. through the aforementioned practice of increasing inclusivity by building community, but also in building relationships with other states, commissioning underrepresented artists, and supporting projects for the entirety of humankind. For this presentation, I'll be focusing on a specific group who come into the museum, which is the youth. From the inception of the museum in 1898, the youth were always an important group of visitors. The past general director states for the BBC, "We realized that most children had their first encounter with Africa through a visit to the museum, either when they came in with schools or with their parents," unquote. Targeting this group became important to the museum as, quote, "For 100 years, the impression given was basically one of stereotypes, that Africa was good for providing nature and we were good for providing culture. From stereotypes, you get prejudgments, and from prejudgments, you get a certain amount of racism," unquote. From this realization, the RMCA made education of the youth an important target. The Let's Talk About Racism space, which I highlighted here, is meant to frame racism outside of being taboo. The space is meant to serve as a discussion space to discuss and combat prevalent common tropes of racism prevalent. The walls within this space have several of these tropes displayed stating, "I don't see color," "Africans are uncivilized," and "Mommy, I don't want to be brown." The Let's Talk About Racism space, combined with more traditional youth programming, exposes children to other cultures and give them space to ask questions and explore their creativity within the institution. Moving on to the concept of displacing, it emerges from Chapter 3, Decentering. In the publication, decentering is defined as the painful process of disrupting what is considered normal. While painful the process is to, quote, "shift how visitors and inhabitants view their history and their identity, as well as move the norm," unquote. Though I suggest the process of displacing, I believe that the term moving to displacing creates a balance between building and displacing in a more cyclical manner. So once an institution can displace their colonial history, they can build something else. And when they figure out that that doesn't work, they can displace it, and it continues a cycle. Thinking of decoloniality through just these terms that hold an inherent relationship between them simplifies the process and allows for more interpretation and replicability. The RMCA in particular worked through the process of displacing the legacy of King Leopold II and other colonial actors. Working to displace the legacy of King Leopold II was not an easy task. When asked, "How does the museum approach Belgium's colonial history?" the museum states, "We morally distance ourselves from King Leopold's policy as a ruler of the Congo Free State. Nonetheless, naturally developing this story and then building with such a strong colonial past is anything but easy." The double L, Leopold II logo, appears 45 times in the museum, and you can find quotes by Leopold II and Albert I in various places which praises colonialism as a system, unquote. To broach this problem, the museum went about this in two ways. One I'll be highlighting here is moving the entrance from the rotunda into a new building. So the old original entrance to the museum is the blue in the center, and the new entrance is green to the left of the main exhibition hall and the governor's house, which is where the director general and other curator offices are. So moving the building into a new entrance, it hosts all secondary functions of the museum with a new welcome pavilion, coffee shop, storage, and maintenance spaces. Visitors will now enter into the new welcome pavilion, receive their tickets, then travel downstairs into the first exhibition spaces. When discussing replicability, this maneuver has already been implemented by other institutions. David Jostlin, in his book, Heritage and Debt, Art and Globalization, discusses the National Gallery Singapore, which opened in 2015 within two colonial era buildings, a neoclassical city hall and courthouse. But instead of having the entrance be in either of these buildings, the planners chose to open a modern below street level entrance. Jostlin describes this maneuver as, quote, "reframing these once dominant colonial monuments as artifacts," unquote. The RMCA is using a similar strategy to distance themselves from the history of King Leopold II by moving the entrance from the Grand Rotunda, meant to memorialize Leopold II, into a new modern building, which thus displaces the grand colonial narrative once pushed by King Leopold II. This is just one example of displacement that the RMCA conducted in, and by using these two modes of decoloniality, I believe that they are broad enough to be adapted and replicated by institutions across the world. Thank you.
questions?
Thank you. That was awesome. I was wondering to what extent practice of decolonizing museums is prevalent in the United States, if there's similar efforts under place?
They're not really mandated by federal law or institutional law. So one example of federal law, though, is a NAGPRA, which is a Native American Grave Repatriation and Protection Act, which mandates that all museums would have to, and other institutions would have to return culturally significant Native American artifacts to their rightful owners if the owner can be found. And that is just one way, but overall, it's kind of institution by institution. The MFA Boston, for example, they have their own provenance research, which do repatriate objects at times, but for a lot of institutions, kind of keeping the artifacts and artworks in the museum is more important. So that's just kind of on the note of repatriation, though in like decoloniality approaches, there aren't that many.
Thank you, Caitlyn. That was wonderful. Can you talk at all? I know this was something you were interested in about sort of the modern approaches for children going in for like a field trip or an experience. Like what might they learn when they walk in? What's the museum like when you go in the new entrance?
The new entrance is kind of more modern, so it's kind of it's really white. It's kind of like the new white cube of museums. So the entrance itself is kind of more so for like secondary functions of the museum. So they wouldn't engage in any artworks there. But once they move into the Let's Talk About Racism space, they kind of host classes with children. And especially they try to have like a wide variety of children of different backgrounds and races to kind of discuss with them like different tropes of racism and kind of like integration. And then there's another space that I didn't talk about, which is Studio 6+, which is in the institution, in the main hall at the institution, and they kind of is more of a teaching place. So they teach children about like Congolese clothing, dress, music, language, and other aspects of culture. And this place is really meant for education, especially for children who would not encounter this otherwise in their schools that are 90% white Belgian.
Thank you. That's all the time we got.